Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review the film Marshall, which is about, well, it appears to be about the Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall, but honestly, a lot of this film is him, and along with this young lawyer named Sam, played by Josh Gad, and Chadwick Boseman and Josh Gad really share the screen time here, and Josh Gad might even have a little bit more than Chadwick Boseman, so this isn't just about Thurgood Marshall. It's really about this partnership that tried to get an innocent man away from being thrown in jail for rape because he's a black man raping a white woman. And obviously this has a lot of potential themes that it could be taking a look at, and I thought it was a real good film. And this was directed by Reginald Hudlin, and I think that he does a good job of balancing the story. And besides like what you would think from the title and everything, I feel like it really balanced these two people and their connection and really fleshed out their stories that are going together, and really how they built up each other and helped each other realize something. And it balances these two very interesting, very different characters, and the pacing overall was well done. There were some parts where it slowed down a bit. This film does push 2 hours, and it does get a bit slow at points, but overall I think it's a well-paced film. And tonally, it does have its fair share of comic relief, which I'm pretty sure is why Josh Gad got put into this film, but honestly, he held his own, and I'll talk more about him later in terms of dramatic moments, because this film does have those. This is a courtroom drama. We have to have those courtroom scenes, and it really brought the drama and heft to what they're trying to talk about in this film. And it does hit emotionally for the most part, and you do feel, now you don't feel super close with the characters, which I think is one of the bigger weaknesses of this film, is that it focuses much more on plot than these characters. And well, Josh Gad's character Sam gets a lot more fleshing out in terms of a person than Thurgood Marshall does. You basically get to see this mythical being of a person, and you do see some moments, and Chadwick Boseman really sells those moments, but overall you don't really see too deeply into Thurgood Marshall as a person. And as a figure, you really do see him, and this charisma and this stature that he brings is really impressive. Looking at the cinematographer, Newton Thomas Siegel, he does a fantastic job of putting this film together, and the shots and the camera work is really interesting, and trying to make this courtroom drama feel more dynamic than just, let's look at the courtroom and have them talking back and forth. The camera movement and what they're able to do as it's like pulling along the jury and pulling up to Josh Gad making his arguments, and the stature that the characters have in these frames makes them larger than life. And I think that was a really cool thing that they did with this film. In terms of the writing, which was Jacob and Michael Koskov, there was more that could have been integrated. This is an interesting case, it's an interesting story, but it does lack some really deep digging in terms of character development, at least for Thurgood Marshall. You do have one very emotional moment for him, and I thought that was powerful, but honestly, seeing a little bit more of that part of the story would have made this a little bit more impactful. Now, in terms of the characters, Thurgood Marshall in this film, he is somebody that he's a character, and you get to see his presence, but he's not, you don't dig super deep into him. You do get to see a lot more of Sam and his relationship with his family and what he's going through and his struggle. There are some people that don't get a whole lot of screen presence and a lot of depth into their characters, but they service their point to the plot, and that's the most important thing in terms of how this film was being told. Now, the dialogue I thought was sharp and witty at times, and could be a little stilted and stereotypical in some parts, but overall I thought it was some very interesting, engaging dialogue, especially between Chadwick Boseman and Josh Gad throughout the film. Now, this film does deal with some very intense issues, and I think it does it in a respectful way. It doesn't go super really dark in terms of a lot of the things, but I think it does hit enough in below the surface for it to really be meaningful. Now, the music, which was done by Marcus Miller, I thought was a good score. It fit the film. It fit the emotions that were supposed to be portrayed in the scenes. Am I going to remember this score a whole lot? Probably not, but I think that it did a really good job of what it was supposed to be doing. Now, I talked a lot about Chadwick Boseman. He really brings some screen presence and charisma to this role. Thurgood Marshall stands as a larger-than-life character because of it. Josh Gad, he's the real MVP of this film, really hitting on the emotional, dramatic moments, but also being able to be funny like we know that he can be. But I do want to see him in more dramatic roles, especially because of this film. Now, Kate Hudson pops up in this film, does what she needs to do, and it's interesting seeing her in a film. Really haven't seen her in much lately. Sterling K. Brown is the man who's on trial here, and he does get a few moments to really show his stuff. And then Dan Stevens, who I'm appreciating more and more ever since I saw Beauty and the Beast, is so slimy and gross, and his character doesn't get a whole lot of depth to him, but what Dan Stevens does with him, you just, makes you want to vomit. He's so vile, and you can really, really want to watch him lose. Now, my closing thoughts of this film: this is a well-crafted courtroom drama that is really, really elevated by some great performances, where it might be lacking in some of its writing and some of its really deep character impact, but it really hits what it's supposed to be doing in terms of telling this true story, which that's going to be a theme. A lot of true stories coming your way on my channel right now, but I am going to give Marshall a B+.